Mike Kaye covers the Carolina Panthers for The Observer in Charlotte. He joins us on the Adam Gold Show. Forgettable Sunday afternoon, and I think it got worse today. We find out from Tom Pelissero that it is possible that Derrick Brown will be lost for the rest of the season with a meniscus tear. I realize everything is fresh, but is there anything you can add to that or expand on it?
Yeah, my colleague at The Observer, Alex Zutlow, confirmed with a source that it's a potentially season-ending injury. And as Pelissero said, with the meniscus, it just depends on kind of what they have to do, as we saw, with the Vikings quarterback, JJ.
Right, McCarthy.
Yeah, so, sorry, my brain. I just got off a flight, excuse me.
It's quite all right.
But, he's their best player. It's by a country mile.
Yeah.
Like, he is the best player on this team. And to lose 47-10 and then have this be the follow-up news is just a brutal turn for the Panthers, who, to a man in the locker room, took accountability. I mean, I don't know how you couldn't after literally every phase of the team failed yesterday. It's a tough pill to swallow.
Mike Kaye joining us here on the Adam Gold Show. 47-10, really just the start of it, and we just talked about the Derrick Brown. There's really no replacement for Derrick Brown. They were a little thin on the defensive line to start the game anyway. That becomes even more of a problem, and the defense was run through on the ground by the Saints early and often as well. I think we thought that the defense would be an issue, at least the run defense might be an issue this year. But let me go to offense, because everything this year is going to be about the development, putting last year for Bryce Young behind him, and I don't think it was anything other than just maybe a big highlighter was put on last year based on the first throw. What's your sense from, even post-game, Dave Canales and Bryce Young, what's your sense for where their heads are at right now?
I think there's a sense of alarm. How could there not be? Frankly, it was maybe the worst game he's played as a pro. He had a terrible game last year in New Orleans. This one capped that one. And, I get it. There's going to be a lot of people blaming the preseason for this, or the lack of preseason reps, but that's kind of like blaming the hygiene of somebody who's 25 on their parents. At some point, you have to be an adult
right,
and a pro and do what you're going to do. And I think, even after those first three drives, the fact that he couldn't bounce back after that really kind of made the performance all that much worse. And so I think they've got to go back to the drawing board. I thought there were guys getting open for the most part. Yes, there were some coverage issues where they had to overcome very good coverage. The Saints played very well. We shouldn't take away from that, but the mistakes made by Bryce Young were pretty alarming, and I think any sane person would say there's a cause for concern.
Yeah, on the very first pass, and I want to get to the play call in a second. Mike Kaye from the Charlotte Observer is joining us here on the Adam Gold Show at Mike_E_K with a Kaye at the end of it. But Deontay Johnson was open, and Bryce Young just overthrew him. And I don't know if he was confused because there were kind of two available receivers there. Adam Thielen was also open a little bit further on down the field. So who knows if Bryce was kind of, confused, or maybe that bothered him a little bit. But he overthrew Deontay Johnson. It was that was clear. But one thing that bothered me about the play call was, and I guess there were two elements. One, Dave Canales had talked about being a running team, and knowing that you were already down 7-0, I don't know, maybe lean on what you said was going to be the identity of that team. Run the ball first and give Bryce some essentially automatic throws, right? We're going to throw it here, short, to this guy because he's going to be open. And look, I give them credit for pushing the ball kind of, 10, 15 yards down the field right away. But he certainly didn't make it easy on Bryce right away.
Well, I thought the play call was actually making it easy on Bryce. He had two guys wide open up the seam, and he missed it. I mean, I'm not defending Canales. There's plenty to criticize him for. But if he hits that completion, it's 15 to 20 yards, and they start off in rhythm. I also think there's a sense of gamesmanship. You say you want to run, and so the defense is expecting run. Hit him with a pass, try to get off to a good start. Really, the failure here was execution on basically all levels of the field, and I thought the play calling was fine. Like, I didn't think he did anything that was particularly, edgy or forward thinking, but I thought it was fine. I think the issue really was execution, and I mean, it showed on all levels. It was almost like this team got together in Uptown Charlotte for a pickup game 15 minutes before kickoff. It was sluggish. It was lethargic. It was the same lackluster Cats basically from last year. And I just, I equated it to a slasher movie starring dinner theater understudies. Like, that's how big of a mess this was. And I think they've got a lot to do to get ready for Los Angeles this week.
Yeah.
Because if they go 0-3 out the gate, this season is just going to get much harder and much more bleak in the standings and in reality.
Mike Kaye is joining us here, covers the Panthers for the Charlotte Observer. We all knew that the roster, you're not going to turn over a roster entirely from one season to the next, just physically impossible. But did what was put out on the field demonstrate just how far away the Panthers were in terms of their personnel a year ago to today, where even the improvements that they made leave them, to me, obviously pretty far behind?
Yeah, I think they're more talented, but that talent doesn't matter when you can't execute, right? And I think the disappointing factor for me is that, while they invested a lot of money in offense, on defense, they basically gave Evero all of his guys, Josie Jewell, Nick Scott, Jordan Fuller, Deshaun Robinson. They invested in guys that knew Evero's system and that he trusted. And I thought the defensive depth was going to be an issue. The defensive starters just were an absolute letdown. There were guys tackling each other, running into each other like bowling pins. They just looked like they had never been in the system before. It was very odd. I think offensively they're fine starter-wise. Compared to last year, I do think they have more talent. But again, talent doesn't mean anything if you don't know what your job is and you're not performing well. And that is an indictment of the coaching staff, not necessarily the play calling, in my opinion. I know you referred to it. The starters played one series in the preseason. Is it foolish to point to that? Because I'm not saying that's a reason, but they did look like they had not played together. I think it's fair to bring up, but I think it's a bit of a straw man when they were this bad all game long. I don't know what 6 combined series in the preseason we're going to do to alleviate like all of these mistakes. They looked encouraging in practice, but then again, we saw how bad the defense was. So maybe it was more of an indictment of the Panthers defense than anything, in that the offense looked better. I just I don't know, covering the Panthers has become a thing where you really can't trust your gut or what you see anymore.
Right.
Because this team just scales to new lows on like a weekly basis and an annual basis.
Man, it's just the Monday after week one. Mike Kaye from the Charlotte Observer is joining us here on the Adam Gold Show. I don't know if this is final thing or not, but I'm curious because I saw somebody asked me on Twitter, how could the defense be so much worse this year through game one than it was last year? My response to that is I don't think the defense was as good as the raw numbers showed us last year. A lot of things like DVOA had the Panthers a lot closer to the bottom than they were to the top. But would it be fair to say they're not as good at the main edge rushing position, Burns versus Clowney? They're not as good, mostly because of injury, on the other side, on like defensive end edge rusher. And maybe Frankie Louvu was all that. Maybe they miss a lot of things like in the middle of their defense, like the second level of their defense that they had a year ago.
I mean, I thought Ryan Burns had a pretty rough year last year. And
Right.
I've only seen Clowney in one game. Although, I mean, look, if you want to compare week 1 to week 1, I mean, Burns had one of the best games he ever had as a Panther against Atlanta. And Clowney was kind of an afterthought in this game.
Mm-hmm.
I think an inside linebacker not playing Trevin Wallace at all is a problem. That guy is a playmaker. I'd argue he was probably a top 2 defensive player in training camp. And he was regulated to special team stuff because Shaq Thompson is a captain and Josie Jewell is Evero's guy. And
Right.
Both of those guys, in my opinion, came up relatively short. But so did the entire defense. Like, I had a lot of confidence in this inside linebacker group because of training camp. But ultimately, the proof was in the pudding yesterday. And I agree with you. I think some of the numbers last year were misleading. Teams weren't passing a ton on the Panthers because they were building big leads and then would run on them. And it was very easy to run on them, especially the first 2 months of the season.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's worth bringing up. I do think Frankie Louvu is missed from a disguise standpoint, even though Josie Jewell is more of a natural inside linebacker. And listen, Dave Canales has said that he wants to play the kids. He wants to play the young players right away. If I were a veteran player after that blowout, I'd be very nervous that my playing time is going to be cut in half or worse.
No, we'll find out coming up on Sunday against the Los Angeles Chargers. Any concerns for Jaycee Horn?
I mean, that first play, I spoke to Jordan Fuller in the locker room. He wouldn't confirm what coverage they were in, but he said it was his fault. He didn't give him help down the field.
Okay.
He kind of bit on a crossing route. Horn's now the best player on that defense. Like, it's verbatim, like, no question about it. He's really going to have to step up. He's going to have to be a turnover maker. And believe me, teams are going to start targeting him more, especially when they see zone coverage, because if there are going to be coverage breakdowns, they're probably going to be against Jaycee Horn, where the safety feels confident in him as opposed to the other members of the secondary.
Yeah, they could use some health, and I don't know if there's even time to hope for positive news about Derrick Brown, but that is a major blow. Mike Kaye from the Charlotte Observer, I appreciate your time, sir. Welcome back from New Orleans, and we will talk to you soon.
Thanks for having me.